Okay, so we'll get started.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a very fair point. Um, Look, they put the event together, so I guess they get to decide
Yeah.
on the nature of it. Um, so I wanted to do two things before we get back into the actual text of Iyov. One is a little bit more, let's say, introductory oriented. Um, and I'm reading Robert Gordis, and he said something which very much resonated with me, which is like, you know how like every kid when they're in like seventh grade and they start playing like little league, they dream of like walking onto the field at Yankee Stadium and playing for the Yankees. You know,
Okay.
like that's their. So every person that starts to like really study Tanakh in depth, they look at Iyov and they're like, one day, like I'm really gonna learn Iyov in depth. And everyone has their take on Iyov, and the range is it really seems to me like everyone seems to find what they're looking for when they learn this Sefer. So when we go through it, you're going to get a lot of my take on Iyov, but I really encourage you on your own to read through it and find what speaks to you about the Sefer because it's very personal in that way. There's a movie, it's based on a book called The Game with Michael Douglas.
Yeah.
So there's a line in there where um, like he's hobnobbing with some of his wealthy friends, and they're like, "Oh, is this your first time like participating in the game?" He's like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh, I wish I could go back and like have my first time again." And that's what this is for me, like learning Iyov with people who haven't necessarily like gone through it very much in depth. Like I want you to have your first time going through it to be not just me coloring it. I want you to take from it what you see there. I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind. When we talked a little bit when we introduced the Sefer, so we talked about some of the different midrashim that people are familiar with about whether or not Iyov existed and when he existed. So I wanted to dive into that just a little bit more, do it a little bit more justice than we had the time to do originally, and then we can go back into the text. But I put together this sheet, and if you're ever looking for these sheets that I give out, they're on Svaria. I think you can just search my name, and it'll be there under the sheets. Um, so we have a couple of points over here, and I'll read the first one for you because it's a little hard to read the text, but they don't have this particular version of Avos de Rebbe Nassan is not in the standard version. So like the Avos de Rebbe Nassan that you would buy in your local farm store just has there's two versions of the text, but Solomon Schechter did some more homework and found additions and extra stuff that is not in the standard version. So this you'll find in the additions to Avos de Rabbi Nassan in the Solomon Schechter version. So he says as follows: this medrash is elaborating on part of Iyov's response to his wife, but that's not necessarily important for us. The context over here is Iyov is already suffering physical deterioration by the hand of the Satan, and we get this medrash that kind of sheds light on who Iyov is as a person and how he responds to his suffering. So it says as follows: the fourth word in it says kivon shesarach. So he's already starting to deteriorate and get sick from this the boils or whatever physical ailment he received. Um, Kivin shesarach habayis alav v'halach v'yosher ba'ashba. So he leaves the house and he goes to sit in a garbage pile, an ashba. Ad shesarach b'sara love until his flesh starts to kind of fall apart on him. Yordim mimenu toloim, and there are now worms crawling on his body. V'hayu toloim osim nekavim b'saro, and these worms are making holes in his flesh. Ad she'asas toloim im chaverta miriva, until the point where the worms are now starting to fight over his flesh with each other. Ma asa Iyov. So how does Iyov respond to this? These worms are basically eating him alive, and they're fighting with each other over pieces of his flesh. So natal achas v'hinicha al chor shalah. He takes each worm and puts it back in its own particular hole. V'achas v'hiniach al chor shalah. Amar lahem, he says to them, basar shalihu, it's my flesh. V'atem osam alav meriva. Now you guys shouldn't be fighting. He makes peace between the worms who are busy like inflicting pain on him. That's essentially how the Medrash describes Iyov's response to his suffering. he takes it not just with equanimity, but he like, we talked a little bit before about how Iyov has the perfect life. He has, from the Medrash's perspective, he has the most perfect possible response to suffering. Not just accepting the suffering, but like making sure the suffering happens in the most, painful but polite way possible. And this is just to kind of cast Iyov as, again, this person who is beyond, not even beyond reproach, he's just beyond anything we can possibly conceive of. There's a machlokus in the Mishnah and Sota as to how Iyov served God, and this is not something you usually find in Mishnayos. Usually Mishnayos are just telling you information. You get very little Agadata in Mishnayos, but here you get a whole Mishnah that's dedicated in an Agadic way to talking about Iyov and how he served God. So the Mishnah in Sota says as follows. Bo bayom, someone else want to read?
Boba Yom Darash of Yeshua and Harkness. I did after Yeshua and Harkness, explain. Abad Iyov is a Kadosh Baruch Hu Ela Me'aba. That he only serve Hashem through love. Shnamaka says, Hein Yikteleni Loi Ayachal. Even though you are killing me, I'll wait for you. I'll wait for him.
Right, meaning Hashem. Even though he's basically torturing me to death, I'm still hoping for Hashem's salvation.
What does that mean? It's only what I said? No.
This pasuk, so if you look at it inside, there is a Kriyanik siv. There's two ways to read the word lo. Do you read it Lamed Vav, I will wait for Hashem, or do you read it Lamed Aleph, I will not? It's a very different Kriyanik siv. They basically mean the opposite of each other. Either even though Hashem kills me, I still hope for him, or even though Hashem kills, or because Hashem kills me, I will not, like, I have no more hope for him.
Either read it that I will wait for him, or any Masapa, or I will not wait for him.
Right.
Tamalerma ad egva like usher to masimi many until I die. Maintain my strength, my integrity. Malami the teacher Shemava that what he did was out of love. I'm gonna be sure me gala offer necha who removes the dust from your eyes. Yecham Zakai Shaisi Darish Kol Yamecha Shloi Ovid Iyov Esamakam Elam Yira. All his life he explained that Iyov that served Hashem out of fear. Shnamaka says Ishtam, an upright man. I'm sorry, Ishtam Biyashia, a simple, not simple, what's Tam? A complete, right? Complete and upright man.
Complete upright man.
Yore Lekim V'Samira, that he fears Hashem and he turns away from evil.
Right. So all this sounds like someone who serves Hashem out of Yira, that he doesn't want anything to get messed up, but not necessarily that he's serving Hashem out of love.
And then Yeshua to teach the student of his students teach from what he did was out of love.
Okay, so you see a pretty convincing argument in the Mishnah here that Iyov served Hashem out of love. Okay, the next question we have is, did Iyov exist? Right? We said there were a couple of different options. There's lo haya v'lo nivra. This whole thing is just a mashal or a limashal, or he did exist, and then we're trying to pinpoint the time that he actually existed. So this is an important reference to Iyov. There's one other time in all of Tanakh outside of the book of Iyov where there's a reference to Iyov, and that is in Yechezkel. Stephen, you wanna read Yechezkel?
And there are three men that should be in some
in the city. So Hashem is talking about, like, I'm going to wreak vengeance, and even if there were these three righteous men, then maybe it would be, everyone would be saved.
Okay, and those three are Noah, Daniel, and Iyov. Ema b'tzidkas aminatzaha, like you said, that through their tzidkas that they would save Nafsham, no Mashalkim. They would save at least on Nafsham is actually themselves.
Right.
They say themselves. That Hashem will God. All right.
Let's keep going. Yeah.
Lu chaya ra'a via ba'aretz b'shibalta v'haisa shemama l'bli over b'nei achaya. Or if I were to send wild beasts to roam the land and they depopulated it, and it became a desolation with none passing through, became because of the beast. Shlosha Sarnash Maela B'tocha Harani no Hashem Elokim Adonai Hashem Imbanim V'Manos Yatzilu Hema V'Adam Natzu Aretz Tiyah Shemala. As I live, declared Hashem, those three men in it would save neither sons nor daughters; they alone would be saved, but the land would become desolate. Oh, Cherev Avi Al Haaretz Hahiv Amar Cherev Tavor Baras Yechrati and Adam Ubehema. Or if I to bring the sword upon that land and say, let the sword sweep through the land that I may cut off from man and beast. So then, Hashem lo yatzilu banim avonos ki heim levadim inatzu. Again, said Hashem that if those two were there, they would save neither sons nor daughters, but they alone would be saved. And then Odever, brought Dever on the land. And I poured down my anger on it. Adam Mahachus and Adam Behema. Noach, Daniel, Iyov B'tocha, Chaim and Hashem, and Bain Obas, Yatzilo Hema, Pischasam, Yatzilo Nasham. They would save not their sons and daughters, but only themselves.
Okay, so what do we see from here?
About Iyov.
Well, let's take this as it stands. What's Yechezkel talking about?
He's pointing out the three righteous people.
That's over there. That there's three righteous people, and they would be saved because of how righteous they were from whatever catastrophe he's talking about.
Unlike, say, Nahara, or somebody could save them and other people.
Right. But what is it? Does it sound to you like Iyov is a real person from what you're reading, not a real person, or somewhere in between?
You're not going to think he's a real person, basically.
Why?
Because otherwise, how is he saving him? I mean,
No,
is
it's real.
theory?
Daniel's real.
Right. Noach is real. Daniel's real. So why wouldn't we're on the back of page 1?
Right.
So why wouldn't you assume that Iyov is real?
Yeah.
I think that's a fair reading. One other interesting. So what? Just because we're on it, what are some commonalities? Can we think of any commonalities between Noach, Daniel, and Iyov?
I'm not sure if you about Daniel.
Daniel seems to be the odd one out. Yeah, Noach had everything gets wiped out. Iyov seems to have everything in his family at least get wiped out. You know, they both went through very catastrophic things. Daniel, doesn't seem to be any record of anything catastrophic happening to Daniel. So the academics pick up on this, and they note that the name Daniel, if you see over there, there's a Korean ksiv. Each time we have Daniel, right? We have it written as Dalid Nun Aleph Lamed without the Yud. Now Daniel, nowhere in Sefer Daniel or anywhere else that I'm aware of is Daniel ever written without the Yud. It's never written Chasar. So they pick up on that, and they realize that there's actually someone who is not Jewish who has the name Danel. And that is what you get right after the Yechezkel paragraph, which I kind of cribbed from Wikipedia. In the 14th century, before the Common Era, there is a record called the Epic of Akhat. You get a guy named Danel, and he's depicted as judging the cause of the widow and adjudicating the case of the fatherless, meaning he's a really righteous guy in the city gate. He passes through trials. His son, Akhat, was destroyed, and then apparently there's part of the whatever record they have of this that's kind of missing or incomplete, but it sounds like the son was replaced or brought back to life by some god at the end of the story, which, spoiler alert, is very similar to the end of Iyov. But if this is the case, that Yechezkel is not talking about Daniel, he's talking about this well-known righteous guy named Danel, then it makes sense to put him in this list as well, because Noach, not Jewish, Iyov, possibly not Jewish, we're still unclear about that, but Danel also not Jewish, and then you get three righteous people who are not Jewish and went through some sort of difficult trials and maintained their righteousness. Then the list of the three makes a lot more sense. Is that fair? We following that? it's kind of weird to have a guy named Daniel in Tanakh. Is that what's sticking in people's minds?
And he seems to, I guess he lived 14th century BC. He probably lived sometime in the time of Moshe.
Right.
And he's not Jewish.
But
Not Jewish.
And he doesn't have to be Jewish either.
Right.
Iyov may have lived at that time.
Right. Yeah.
And
According
Noah
to
was
some
out of-
opinions, yeah, Noach is even earlier. Okay, so that takes us to the question of was Iyov Jewish? And so what you have in the bottom list over there is not extensive by any means, but it's just to give you kind of the beginnings. This is something I think we should just keep in mind as we go through the book, because I think you're going to see arguments maybe in both directions. We learn halachos from what Iyov does in terms of mourning and how his friends respond. Right.
I'm Jewish. I'm
Jew, right. Check for Jewish. There's no there. It would be
Not
very.
necessarily, we learn from Laban.
We learn.
Not a whole set of.
Not a lot, but we don't learn some of the things.
Have you heard?
No, late to marry or something.
Halachos. I'm not aware
Not a
of.
lot.
There's no other sefer in Tanakh that I'm aware of where there is not. Forget about not the main character not being Jewish. There's not another single Jew in the entire story.
Jewish.
Right?
Jewish.
Yonah, you've got, he's okay. Then you have a Gemara in Baba Basra that lists him very clearly as one of the Chasidei Umosa Olam, possibly even being a Gentile prophet. It lists 7 Gentile prophets, and you've got Bilam, and then you've got Iyov and his 3 friends, and I forget who we round out the 7 with, but so the Gemara seems to come out pretty clearly on the he's not Jewish side, not Jewish. There are, to my knowledge, there is no record of Jews living in the land of Utz in any of the times that this story is supposed to have taken place.
This is Thai, not Jewish.
Right.
Right now, I'm just thinking about pretzels.
Right. Every time when you hear Utz, it's straight to pretzels. So we're kind of evenly balanced, and that was intentional. But I want you to just, call it out anytime we go through the text and you see something that jumps out at you as, oh, this is only something that makes sense if he's Jewish, or this is only something that makes sense if he's not Jewish. And Shimi will keep track. We're tied. We're deadlocked at 2 each.
Where was Iyov going? So when he left this house and this is happening, he's almost like walking like.
He goes like out to the local to the local ashpa.
Okay.
Where is this?
There's a first before you got this text.
The first, that first metric
Is there something
is
special
talking
about
about
going
him.
to the ashpa, or
That's a great point. I was going to wait till we got to it, but it's a very fair point. According to some of the midrashim, he had 2 different kinds of boils. There was like I think they call them wet and dry. So the reason he's in the ashpa is because there's like dust over there, and so the wet boils he's treating by sitting in the dust. That's his lower half, and the dry boils he's like in the sun, and that's like helping them kind of dry out, or maybe it's the reverse. But the idea being that like he's sitting and trying to like he's being afflicted with 2 competing types of pain, and like you couldn't treat them both the same way. If you treated them both the same way, you'd aggravate one. So he's sitting in the dust to kind of deal with those 2 conflicting pains in 2 different ways.
We saw the same thing about the mattress
Yeah.
for the boils, right? Wet and dry.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. Okay, so in the time we've got left, we'll do a super duper quick review of what we've done so far, and then we'll start. I think we were at Pasuk Yud Bet. So far what we've seen is we have Iyov from the land of Utz, and we were talking about maybe Utz is a reference to Eitzah. If this whole thing is a mushal or it's limashal, so then we're going to try to read into some of the location names and the people names. And then basically what we saw is everything about this guy is perfect. He is super perfect. The number of children he has is perfect. The amount of stuff he has is perfect. And then his kids are maybe not perfectly behaved, but he takes care of that as well. So his kids have a weekly, have a series of daily parties over the course of a week, and they include the sisters, and they're all partying it up. And every week after the party cycle is over, Iyov wants to make sure that no one did anything bad, like curse God in their hearts, and so he brings a korban to kind of take care of any possible aver that might have existed. and then the cycle starts all over again. That was scene one taking place down on Earth, and then we cut to scene two, which is up in heaven, and something's going on with these Bnei Elohim and the Satan, and God has a very interesting conversation with the Satan, and he tells him about this amazing guy named Iyov, and the Satan basically says, well, of course he's awesome. You've sachto ba'ado. You've protected. You've given him everything. He's wealthy and he has wonderful kids and he's got a great life. So who wouldn't be super awesome, fantastic if they had all of that? But if you take all of that away, let's see what your Mr. Awesome guy does in that situation. I bet, says the Satan, that he will blaspheme, that he will curse you, or in Beirachta, we have as a euphemism. So God says, okay, that sounds like a great idea. Why don't you go and do that? Everything that he has is in your hands, says God. Rak elav al tishlach yadcha v'yetzi asata mi'im pnei Hashem. That was what we had at the end of Pasuk Yud Beis. So now we start Pasuk Yud Gimel. Yossi, you want to read? You're the only one who hasn't read. So it's basically no choice whatsoever.
Vayhi hayom.
So what does that remind us of?
Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah.
Well, we just had that. That was the beginning of the scene in heaven.
Right, where Hasatan shows up.
Right. So if you look back quickly at Pasuk Vav, it starts the exact same way. By Yehi Hayom, it was the day. So we said that maybe that's Rosh Hashanah because they're all there for a day of judgment. But now we're referencing that by using the same language as we cut back to the now we're back on.
It kind of makes sense, meaning God and Satan have this conversation, and then God says, "Okay, so do this." Satan's like, "All right, let's go.
Right,
Let's
let's
go.
go."
It's great. Great. One of Nosav Ochlim v'Shosim Yayin b'Beis Achihem HaBachar. So they're all the sons and daughters are eating and drinking by the Bachar's house.
Right. So we assume, and I haven't seen anyone say otherwise, that this is now the beginning of the next cycle. That you would start with the Bechor. So it's Sunday. The Bechor is the first guy to start out, and so we're at the beginning of the next cycle.
Malach Baal Iyov Vayomar. And Malach, an angel or
So we're gonna
messenger?
this is a messenger. I
Okay.
think you're right to harp on that because I think that word is chosen particularly because the last scene was the Bnei Elohim, these godly creatures are talking to God. So now the pasuk is choosing its words very carefully and a malach, not a nar or whatever comes to, but specifically a malach comes, but it's really a messenger who comes to Iyov and he says as follows.
Habakar Hayu Chorshos Vasonos Roos Al Yedehem. The cattle are
The
plowing,
plowing, yeah.
right? And the donkeys are grazing. Al Yedehem, like what, by themselves?
Right by them, Al Yidem, like next
Oh,
to
okay.
them. The Medrash says that Iyov had a taste of Olam Haba because the cattle are plowing, and then the donkeys walk right behind them and eat the food that sprouts up immediately afterwards. Right, that's the kind of sense you get from the pasuk that the two of them are together, and in Yemos Mashiach, there's no process anymore. Just like by Gan Eden, you plant something and it immediately just sprouts. So that's what's happening over here.
Vatipol Shiva Vatipochem Vesana Arim Hiku Leficharev.
Shva is like Malkat Shva, like the Queen of Sheba.
Oh.
These people came from Sheba to steal all of Yov's stuff.
So they took his stuff and killed his kids.
So these Na'arim are the slaves that are watching the cattle.
Va'imolta rak ani levadi lahagid lach. Oh, they just left me to tell you.
Right. I was the only one that was able to escape, Imalate, and I'm here just letting you know that like your stocks have all crashed, basically.
Od zemedaber v'zeba vayomar eish Elokim nafla min hashamayim v'tiv'ar batzon u'vanaorim v'tochlem. V'imolta rak ani levadi lahagid lach.
Right? It's like gallows humor. Like it's funny,
Right.
but it's sad at the same time, right?
Sorry, it's terrible.
So,
So another one comes in.
right, another
This fire
catastrophe.
broke out and
Fire broke out.
everyone's dead
Right,
except for me.
right, exactly. Except for me, and I'm just here to tell you that everything has been all your sheep are burnt, and all your slaves that were watching them have
Isn't
been
it interesting
consumed.
though that like if meaning I guess if these Shebanese soldiers are coming, whatever it is, then fine. Like maybe the person can say, "V'imota rak ani levadi lehagidlach." I know, meaning
They
like
spared
they
me.
spared me because they told me go tell Iyov what we just did to him.
Right,
But over here, there's a fire,
right,
and I was saved so that way I can come tell you.
right. It's not that so.
Right.
It
It's
happens to be that I was saved, and I'm just here telling you like the bad
right. It
news.
seems a little bit like, no, this is my mission now,
Right.
was to come and tell you. Od zem medaber b'zeba vayomar kasdim samu shlosha roshim.
They separated. This is like a military tactic. They separated into
Three
three
groups.
troops, and then they attacked from the various sides.
Vayifshitu al hagmalim vayikochum v'eshana orim hikul v'chorev v'yimolta rak ani levadi lahagilach. Oh man. Okay. Ad ze
So this has ad,
ad
and
instead of
every
od.
every text I've seen has ad instead of ode. There's
Right.
no reason to assume that this should be translated any differently than the other three.
Ad ze medaber zeba vayomar v'necho v'nosecha ochlim v'shosim yayin b'veis achihim habachor. V'hine ruach gedola ba'a me'ever hamidbar vayiga ba'arba pinos habayis vayipol al hanaorim vayamusu v'yimolta rak ani levadi lahagilach.
Okay, this is super intense.
Right. And again, it seems like switch off. First you have soldiers, so then okay, it makes sense. I can, I was like tasked with telling you. Now there's a natural disaster.
Right.
Again, an army is
Human.
coming,
Right.
and then again a
Very good.
natural disaster.
Very good. Absolutely. The Dot Mikra points out, and he does a lot of the real heavy lifting to figure out how this is true, but that each one of these comes from a different direction, like where Shva is and where the who else did we have coming over here?
The Kazdim.
The Kazdim, where the wind comes from to do one thing, where the fire comes from, right? It actually says, I think, where the fire came from.
From God.
No, but what direction?
What?
Yeah.
Eish Elokim nafla min hashamayim.
Okay, right. So he tracks down like wherever else that is used, it has directional like association. So he basically says this is happening. It's happening one after another. Like
From all
that's
sides.
this idea, right? Of like Odzem and Aber Zeba, that like he didn't even have time to recover, to process one thing, and the next thing's already hitting him, and then it's hitting him from all sides, and it's hitting him like you said. It's hitting him through human hands, through God's hands. Like it's a complete catastrophe in every possible way. So one thing that bothered me the first time I read this is, what was the Sultan given permission to do this last thing, to kill the kids?
All the kids are just the men.
So that's a fair point. So the Mefarshim say that when it says the Na'arim, it includes the girls too. Let's go.
Yeah, God said just don't touch him. No.
Let's go back and read the words. The Sultan says, "U'ulam shlachna yadcha v'gad b'chol asher lo." Go touch everything that belongs to him. Is he going to curse you? Vayomar Shalom Satan kol asher lo biyadecha. Whatever belongs to him is in your hands. So
Rak Iyov al tishlach yadecha.
right. Okay, but is when we use the phrase kol asher lo, does that include his kids?
Should be.
Yeah.
Should.
Yeah. Wait a second. Was it Vayetze? Where is it? He gathers his wife, his children, v'chol asher lo, and everything that was his.
So
Like-
that would prove the opposite.
No,
Why
I would
would you
say-
have to call out the children if they're part of kol asher lo?
I would say it seems like maybe like it's the summation of everything that is his.
So it's that maybe just he's spreading out the most important things and the Kol Shalo and everything else. We're not going
It's
to
like
bother mentioning.
It's like
all
the
minor
catch-all,
I'll
things.
ask you
because
in a
all
different
of
way.
these things
Cattle.
belong to
I'll
him.
ask you in a different way. Do
Right.
the kids deserve to die? God said,
maybe
okay, we can
maybe
test
they cursed
Iyov. We're
Hashem.
gonna test Iyov. Maybe they think
Well,
we can test Iyov, but
the whole
Maybe they did.
the whole parsha of the parties. Why is that brought out?
One second.
Right, they did.
Time out.
let
Okay,
him finish
fine.
his
Okay.
thought.
Maybe they did.
No, I'm saying I would say no. I mean, you can't use them. Each person has
They have their own.
judge in their own. Yeah, they can't be part of the divine plan on Iyov. But the fact they have this whole parsha about them parties and this, and he has to bring abundance. Obviously, they were.
And they started the party again. So maybe by starting the party, so that's one of the Mefarshim says they deserve. I think it's the Malbim. They were sinful. They were bad people, and so the fact that they were killed is not just to test Iyov. It's because they deserved it.
The test would be in terms of like I said, in all four directions.
Let's compound the question. Did Iyov deserve this?
That's the overarching
Right.
question.
So
and you'll get let's wait till
so
we hear Iyov. Iyov will tell you very clearly, no, I did not deserve this. This is not right. And his friends are going to argue with him and say, it's impossible that you didn't deserve this because why would God do that if you didn't deserve it? And then the question we're going to have to pose is, well, we who've read the beginning of the book and the friends did not read the beginning of the book, we know that Iyov didn't deserve this.
Right.
Right? We talked a little bit. I think someone mentioned last time that well maybe God tests the righteous people so that they can raise their level or that they can become who they are after the test is a qualitatively better or different person. But that still kind of begs the question for me at least. You didn't give the guy an option. You didn't come to Eve and say, hey, if you want to level up, I have this test you can go through. What do you think? You just said, I'm testing you. What if he failed the test? Or what if he doesn't want to go through the test? He's like, no, I'm good here. We're not even asking him.
Because that's not an option. Meaning, look, we get tested. We get tested. Either you pass or you don't.
Okay. But if the...
What do you mean? Just leave me alone.
That I'm not disagreeing with.
That's
I'm
not an
saying
option.
but the point I'm trying to hit on is if we say the purpose of the test is so that the person can be raised up, right? What if the person that only makes sense if that's the only option. If the person fails, he can say, well, "Why'd you test me? I was doing just fine. I'm a good guy. I'm a Tom Yasher."
And maybe that could be an argument in order to say, don't punish me for the fact that I messed up.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, there's a big difference between not getting punished and getting rewarded.
Yeah, that's true.
So who says that you can't use that argument? Who says that we haven't? People haven't been using that argument,
Right,
all the time. Like,
yeah, maybe it works very well.
right.
Okay. Fine. So we have Iyov basically everything that he has been removed, right? Just like the Satan in one fell swoop. Okay. So let's see. Well, before we read, don't read ahead. What are your guesses? What is Iyov's response? Does he curse God or does he not curse God?
Doesn't curse God.
No?
I don't think he does.
I mean, come on. If Iyov is,
it's a short book if he
yeah.
curses God, right?
It's only round one.
I would have to guess he probably doesn't.
Okay, so let's see what he does.
Vayokam Iyov. Iyov got up. Vayikra asked me Ilo, and he tore his coat, his mail.
Yeah, his outer garment. And this is the halachos of mourning over here because he heard that his kids died, so he stood up, he tore.
Vayogaz es rosho. What does that mean?
He like gazizas to shear a sheep. He shaved his head.
We don't shave our
No,
heads.
we don't.
Okay.
He's here.
Wait, so
not Jewish.
Right. So,
oh snap. Vayipol arza. He fell on the ground. Vayishtachu. He bowed down.
right. So some of the portion will say that falling on the ground is like an emotional response, and then ishtachu means he like stood back up and he bowed, like to show that he accepted what happened.
Vayomer Orom yatsasi mi beten imi. I was unclothed when I left my mother's womb. Orom ashuv shama. And I'll be naked when I return.
Yep.
Hashem nosan v'Hashem lokach. Yehi Shem Hashem Mevorach.
So this is maybe one of the most famous psukim, certainly in Iyov and maybe in all of Tanakh. You get this by Tziduk Hadin. Um, People say this pasuk. There's three stages over here. The first stage is Aram Yatzasi mi beten imi v'aram ashuv shama. I came into this world and I didn't have anything, and I'm going to leave this world also without anything. This ashuv shama is not ashuv to the womb,
Right.
but to the womb of Mother Earth, so to speak. So, whatever God gave me or takes away from me is fair because it all came from Him in the first place.
Right.
Hashem Natan, Hashem Lakach. So there's first just a basic line without God. Whatever takes place, none of what I have is really mine anyway because I didn't come in with it and I'm not leaving with it, so it's not mine. So whatever is taking place is fair. Second of all, whatever is taking place is from God. Hashem Natan, Hashem Lakach. Right? So that's now we're into the religiosity of it. And then he goes one step further. Not only does he not curse God, and not only does he say, okay, whatever happened and is fair, but Yehi Shem Hashem Mivarach. He's actually blessing God over what happened. Right? That's an even higher madrega. Than what we were worried. Maybe he's going to curse God, right? This whole thing's been revolving around maybe he's going to curse God. His response is just the opposite. Not only is he not cursing God, he's blessing God. And now we get the narrator.
B'chol lo chata Iyov. With all of this, Iyov did not sin. V'nosan tifla lelokim. What is tifla?
Tifla means something of no substance. He didn't start just espousing things that are ridiculous to God, to start, ranting and raving and complaining.
This should be the end.
This should be the end of the book, right?
This should be the end.
Yeah.
Got four directions, right?
Right.
Yeah, pretty much your wealth, your family, or at least your children.
Right.
Well,
I mean, all of your assets and your
Yeah.
family gone.
Right. I mean, your wife is still around.
I'm glad you brought it up here because I was gonna wait until the end of Parak Bays. It's really interesting that the wife is not mentioned here at all. I mentioned it to you when we were doing the Medrash, just kind of in passing. He has a wife. She's gonna show up and start talking at the end of Parak Bays. It's, to me, kind of mind-boggling that she's not mentioned at any point. Not when we're talking about everything that Iyov has, not when we're talking about the people who get killed so that Iyov is in ruins. She's just kind of tucked away until she has to show up and do her thing, which we'll talk about. There's actually, I found I think it was a PhD dissertation on the wife. The wife of Iyov appears for one pasuk. I think it's 6 words. This guy wrote like a 400-page dissertation on the wife of Iyov. I'm not making this. I mean, there's more. She says a lot more.
She's not the son of God.
No. There is. I don't know if we can even call it a medrash. There's something called the Testament of Iyov that I think was written around the year 500, where it kind of embellishes on some of the stuff that takes place in Iyov. And in that, the wife of Iyov has a bigger role, and she has a lot more speaking parts. But just in the book, very very little. So the answer to your question is to be determined, because when we get to Iyov's wife, we'll have what to say about her. But yeah, I'm with you. It seems pretty clear the Satan lost the bet, right? Would anyone disagree with that statement?
We know he continues. We know the basics.
Yeah, look, we've got 40.
Right.
We've got 41 more prakim.
Clearly, the book isn't done yet, but
Right. Doing more challenges.
Right.
Yeah.
But
But
if I'm writing this book, the next
think,
parak, the Satan should show up with his tail between his legs and say, "Oh man, super sorry about that. I guess I was totally wrong." Right?
If he thinks he can do more.
Yeah.
He's not the one to give up.
No.
Unless you make.
No, definitely not one to give up.
he's more of a double or nothing kind of guy.
But even let's say the 10 descendants of Abraham, I mean, it wasn't until the 10th one where he actually has to lose a child. And again, I don't know all the 10, 10, maybe we can talk it out, but this scene is just so packed into the first Nisayan, if there's many more.
Yeah. There's one more coming, at least one more coming. But yeah, this is pretty heavy stuff. I guess we can save the Ramban on the kids for later, but this seems pretty total in the in terms of how hard Iyov is hit.
It's like shock and awe.
Right, shock and awe.
It's
I mean,
not
it's,
like,
it's supposed to
it's
feel.
not building up.
No,
Right.
it's supposed to feel like shock and awe. That's this idea of like one guy didn't even finish talking.
Mhm.
He hasn't got the words out of his mouth when the next guy shows up and he's like, "Oh, I have something to tell
They
you."
just, those messengers just like lining up. And
Yeah.
messenger 1, 2. They're just like standing there.
Yeah.
Like,
When you're done
these
with him,
soldiers, I gotta deal with fire. You?
Right.
You
You want to
have
go first? No, you go.
Right. No, please. This way.
Right. And it's I didn't even get into all of it, but like Shva and like where these people come from is like the ends of the earth. Like
Right.
people are going out of the and maybe it's to steal Iyov stuff because Iyov stuff is like super
where do you
valuable.
think those the camels come on? I mean, they're coming from, what do you mean the ends of the earth?
The people that are
Shva
coming.
and-
Remember, he's an Utz, so like these are not neighboring countries. These are other.
Kazdim.
Right, the Kazdim and the people from Shva that are coming, like this is all coming not just out of left field, but out of multiple left fields, and it's very clear. That's another important point. It's very clear to Iyov that this is not by chance, right?
Mhm.
He completely identifies this as coming from God.
It's like some type of gang from Australia hitting us here. You know?
Right. It's not like,
Here.
oh man,
Yeah.
what
Right.
bad luck.
Right.
Like today was a really bad day.
Like, where did I get those guys on a Dell?
Crocodile Dundee coming, right?
Right.
You're gonna say,
Okay. Okay, I think this is a good place to stop. And
Good.
anyone who wants to read ahead in Parak Bays will probably do the first maybe 10 or 12 psukim up to the psucha, yeah. 10 or 11 psukim for next week. Okay, Yashar Koch.
Very good.